It's fine. Sure. Okay. What I need you to do is do some talk testing while I mute myself.
Fraud, honor thy mother and father. He replied and said, Teacher, all of these I have observed from my youth. Is this enough, or do I need to keep going? He replied and said, Teacher, all of these I'll keep going. I'll keep going. Let's see here. Hold on 1 second. David Green is the owner of Hobby Lobby. He is founder as of November 2019. His net worth is $7.8 billion.
He replied and said, Teacher, all of these I have observed from my youth. Is this enough, or do I need to keep going?
Welcome to Heresy and Hearsay, a podcast proclaiming faith in a political discussion. I'm Reverend Barney.
Okay, I think we got it.
Okay.
I'm
Reverend Barney.
Okay, I
Weird
think
what?
we got it.
Okay. What's wrong? Weird.
There's such a delay on the Twitch feed, it took her a while to come through, and I'm trying to... And I'm worried about doubling. There's such a delay on the Twitch feed, it took her a while to come through, and I'm trying to... I'm worried about doubling. Now my dog is starting. There's such a delay on the Twitch feed, it took her a while to come through, and I'm trying to... And I'm worried about doubling. There's such a delay on the Twitch feed, it took her a while to come through, and I'm trying to... I'm worried about doubling. Now my dog is starting. What in the world? It doesn't sound like we're doubling at the time. There's such a delay on the Twitch feed, it took her a while to come through, and I'm trying to... I'm worried about doubling. There's such a delay on the Twitch feed, it took her a while to come through, and I'm trying to... I'm worried about doubling. My dog is starting. What in the... Alright. It seems that we can both be heard. That's...
least you can already hear. I did 2 shows of Geek Grills where Linda and I were like halfway almost done with one show, and discovered that her voice was not coming through. And even though it was showing, like, in all my meters, I could see the voice, it wasn't even on the recordings on my home machine. Completely unrecoverable episodes. Jen is not well. She's struggling. She's not been able to do shows in a while. But, yeah. Anyway. I guess we should share stuff, huh? If I can type. It's 40. Through to the Facebook. What is the tweeter I'm signed into? Mine. That's fine. So did that. Let me tell some Diamond Club people. And Incast people, do they have a place for that? I got invited to another, like, Incast Media Network place. Jen is in a team discussion raid. Talk. Neat. Jen's chatting now somewhere else. What the fuck? Right. Sure. Time Club. Can we? I get something to copy and paste. Hold on. Copy. Paste. Alright. Sure. Hi there, I'm September, also known as 9 of 12, and you can follow me on Twitch and Twitter by that moniker. You can hear me on the Geek Grills podcast on most Mondays. Heresy and Hearsay has a Patreon site. Please go find that at patreon.com/Heresy and Hearsay. If you'll visit there and help us with just $2 a month, it'll go a long way to help us make this humble show. You can also contribute with bits in Twitch or subscribe for free if you have Amazon Prime.
Okay.
And you guys can, and two things. Fuck it. I'll unmute two things. Alright, I'm gonna talk, and let's talk a little and see what kind of feedback I get.
Okay, so we're just going to talk and see what happens right now. Is that what we're
Yeah,
doing?
you can talk about your Sailor Scouts, and I'll be able to cut that together.
Okay. So, all right. So, my brother introduced me into the Sailor Moon franchise. It was late in the Sailor Moon series when I first saw it, and I fell in love with Sailor Moon. And ever since, I have been this huge Sailor Moon fan. I even own the rare Sailor Moon role playing game. I own several Sailor Moon video games that are only in Japan.
All right.
So I'm just like,
You're a little obsessed.
I'm a little obsessed with Sailor Moon. Sailor Moon it was because it was, first off, it was like 5 young women who were powerful but were still women. They weren't like having to become something else, to be who they were.
Gotcha. So having to be transformed, really, not
right. I mean, they were still. Go ahead.
You turn your mic up a little.
I can try. I don't know how to do that.
All right, All right, I'm gonna turn you up a little everywhere I can and see if that helps.
Hold on,
because you were really quiet for some reason.
Let's see here.
And we might want to start again because that will be a bear to mix up. Well, yeah, I'm good.
That's the sound system.
What are you using for a mic these days?
I'm using my headset. Just the regular headset thingy.
Okay. The pawn shop in Statesville.
Yeah.
Has a Yeti snowball for $35.
Okay.
Sitting there. Just saying. A lot of podcasters use those. It's an older one, but
I've been looking at getting a Yeti and stuff like that. I just like the headset right now, but yeah. I mean, it's what I use for work, and it seems to work fine. Let me take a look here. Hold on 1 second.
Let me see if I corrected it with turning you up in another place I was able to. And then, yeah. Yeah. This is like painful.
I'm sorry.
No, it's not you. It's just.
Was it just okay? Do we just want to use this as a test day and then do a show next week? Would that make you feel better?
No, I want to get something out, especially because I can't publish my last 2 episodes of Girls. I'm going to have to record some kind of like, oh my god, I'm so sorry episode to stick up there. I don't.
Hold on. So, let me see if I can. Yeah, because I'm using master. That's the master volume. That's the speaker volume. Discord volume. That doesn't help getting it all. But let's try this. Is this any better? Say something.
Well, I'm not.
That just turns you up. That doesn't help me.
Yeah, I'm not the one that's having a volume issue.
It's
a matter of. Yeah.
See, I'm using.
All right, you're just gonna have to be careful and speak up straight into your mic, and we'll be good. All right.
Okay. All right. So that's all right. That's what I'm doing. I just don't know how to adjust.
Yeah, because I can normalize it at a certain amount later. It's just a matter of actual live people watching. We want them to at least be able to hear you clearly, and you were really low. But I think I correct as much as I can on that end.
All right. So shall we start from the beginning?
Sure.
All right. Okay. Let me take a sip of drink. Yay. Hey, all you people that are getting to see this on the YouTube stuff, this will be fun.
It's the magic.
All right. So let's try this. And that was the first time I ever said that entire paragraph correctly. Don't watch me botch it this time. All right. Welcome to Heresy and Hearsay, a podcast to reclaim faith in the context of political discussion. I'm Reverend Barney, and you can follow me on Twitter at SethRothII. You can follow the show on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and any podcast catcher. Just look for Heresy and Hearsay. Please like, share, follow, subscribe to us. Also, give us a review. That helps others find us. And as always, to help me today, my partner in crime, Ember.
Hi there, I'm September, and you can follow me on Twitch and Twitter at 9of12. That's NINEOF12. And you can hear me on the Geek Grills podcast. Heresy and Hearsay has a Patreon site. Please go there at patreon.com/Heresy and Hearsay, where you can visit to help support us. Just $2 a month goes a long way to help us make this humble show. You can also contribute with bits in Twitch or subscribe for free if you have Amazon Prime. Barney. Okay, there was a breath there, so I can cut this out. Your volume personally judged as it dropped as soon as you were reading, compared to your normal speaking voice, just so you know.
Okay.
Okay? So just go ahead and talk a little louder. No one's going to think you're shouting at them.
Okay, when I read in okay, that's fine. Okay.
Yeah, you read, you're dropping, just so you know.
All right.
Practice.
Future reference, I will be talking like this, and I'll try not to read anymore. How's that sound? I'll just make it up as I go. Great. All right, that's fine. All right. So, for those who are wondering what the hell this is all about, we're having some technical difficulties, and we're restarting for those who are listening to the podcast version. So, sorry about that in advance.
Your mic arm, put it right next to your mouth. Is it? Okay.
As close to the mouth as I can get it.
All right.
It doesn't extend.
Okay.
It just moves up and down.
And it's been fine in the past, so I don't know what's going on.
I don't either.
Don't know.
I just checked Discord's thing, and it's the mic thing. Volume is all the way up.
Okay.
So I am doing the best I can. I am sorry in advance. So today's show, because of what's been going on and so much news and so much negativity and numbers dropping about this, that, and another, we thought today we would do something different, and we thought we would talk about things that inspire us, things that we enjoy, things that we come back to, and media, so that we can find some comfort and find some joy during these troubling times, especially while we're all isolated, either with our families or alone. So some of this you may want to watch, or may want to take an inspiration and check out, or not. So um, I thought I would start by talking about the markings on my body. Um, so I have 6 tattoos right now. 5 of them are geek tattoos, and one's a personal tattoo. So I'll talk about the geek tattoos. My very first tattoo, a friend of ours went with me on my very first tattoo, and it is it's a symbol of a vampire clan from Vampire the Masquerade, and it is my favorite clan to play because they're a bunch of wizards, and I like that vampires can throw fireballs and lightning bolts too, and that is the Clan Tremere, and that is my very first tattoo, and it is all geometric symbols, and it is purple because, of course, and that was my very first tattoo. It was probably it's not the role playing game I initially started with, but it's the one that I enjoy a lot, and I thought that would be a very interesting symbol to start out with because I don't want like pictures of faces or names on
Mm-hmm.
my body. You never put a name on your body because there's an old lore that if you put a name on your body, that's a name that you're going to lose. So
Well,
I
I don't know
never
about that being lore, but I, where'd you get that? I mean, it's more like don't
my
do that because it's going to be your ex.
that for my tattoo artist.
Okay. Well, okay. Because I have names on my body, but, they're in Gallifreyan.
That may be okay. So that may be fine. Um, the next set of tattoos is I have 4 tattoos on my forearms, which is probably why I will never actually be in a pulpit in the summertime in the South. That's for sure. Well, times are changing, but I'm pretty sure they don't appreciate their preachers to have tattoos. But so the first set is the blue and green lantern symbols. When I was a little lad, when I was a tiny Reverend Barney, there was this show on that on weekdays or weekends or whatever, done by Hanna Barbera called the Super Friends. Now this was the second iteration. It wasn't the one that had the teenage kids. It's the ones that had the Wonder Twins. But there was a superhero on there that I'd never seen before. I'd heard of Superman and I grew up with Adam West Batman and everything else. But there was a superhero on there I'd never heard of before called the Green Lantern. And when he was flying around with everybody else, and him and Wonder Woman, he was flying by himself, and Wonder Woman was in her invisible jet, and they faced off against somebody, and he just pointed his ring at this creature, and all of a sudden this giant set of hands just appeared out of nowhere and grabbed it, and I'm like, wait, he can make things with his ring just by using his mind? That is great. And so it's like the greatest thing ever, that you can create these. Now I know the lore and stuff because I'm obsessive geek that I am, but that it's like constructs and stuff like that. And the reason I got the blue was because of the lore. They say that the only person that can really control a blue lantern ring and give it the most power is someone who has a green lantern ring. So that's why I have the 2 symbols, because green is for will and blue is for hope. And then right above them I have 2 uh, symbols of the planets, one of them being Mercury and the other one being Saturn. And on the Mercury, it has love and learning, and on Saturn, it has death and rebirth. And those are the words of my two favorite Sailor Scouts from Sailor Moon, which is probably my favorite anime, seeing I've seen all 200 episodes and all four movies, plus the Crystals version. I even seen several episodes of the live action. And that's all I'm going to say about that. Can we move on?
I suppose they'll have to.
Well, I got obsessed about it. My brother still regrets the day he first pointed out Sailor Moon to me after I spent almost $1,000 on Sailor Moon stuff. And my parents weren't too happy about that either when my entire walls were covered with Sailor Moon posters and Sailor Moon stuff. But I really liked Sailor Moon because it was these five young women who were struggling through junior high and high school and trying to, deal with romance and stuff like that, which I would think I would not care about being a boy and being not a teenager at the time when I first started watching the show. But it was compelling because it showed their friendship and they were from different walks of life, but also how they came together as friends to fight these galactic evils and how much they cared about each other. And I think it was like, I don't know, this revelation of how women could be friends because growing up you hear about women backstabbing each other and stuff like that as a boy. You get all that toxic
Mm-hmm.
women stuff, and then you see this show and you're going, wow, that's incredible. That's what I hoped life would be like.
Right.
And then I always had a thing for Wonder Woman, so to see five women kind of be the embodiment of Wonder Woman in some way. And there's this great meme that I have. It's Sailor Moon talking to Wonder Woman, and Sailor Moon is like, "Oh, so you were the Sailor Scout of Earth all along." And I'm just like, "Yes, that's it in a nutshell." Makes me so happy and such a giddy guy. So
So is that all of them?
well, that's all the tattoos. Yes, we were going to start with the tattoos, and we'll go from there. And you spoke about your Gallifreyan tattoo, so why don't you go with your tattoos?
Okay, sure. Well, the first one I have is on my chest. It's an Ankh, a representation of everlasting life and of death, depending on your mythological context. It has some roses and then some tribal. The stems are in like a tribal theme, which connects the two. A weird story there is when I got it, it was just sort of a freehand design the artist did, and then I had him add a piece because it didn't seem quite balanced to me. And then I got back to visit in Buffalo, kind of visit my tribe, and one of the people there got really upset because I was still sort of new to this group of people, and they all had tattoos with an M in them for the name of the tribe. And I had unintentionally ended up with an M that even looked like this, very similar to the style of the M they all had. Just coincidentally in there in the tribal work. And she flipped out. She thought I did it on purpose. I was like, I didn't even know you did this thing. But I ended up spending many, many years of my life with that tribe. So one of them was there at the birth of my son. So, accidents happen. Then that tattoo I got 26-ish years ago.
Okay.
The second tattoo I got was on my back, and unfortunately, it was free, so that's good. But it was single needle in somebody's apartment in Toronto. I call it my midlife crisis tattoo, right? I was like turning 30, kind of freaking out about it. This guy's like, well, look, I did that guy's and I did that guy's. I was like, oh, he's all right. And what I wanted was like a fae creature, but with bat wings, kind of something androgynous. And what I got was a copy of a Boris Vallejo drawing, which is a much more succubi-looking, demony looking thing. And it was really big. And he kept taking smoke breaks. And I ended up, after 6 or 7 hours, I was starting to go into shock. And I was like, you have to stop. I can't do this. And until recently, it's only like in the last year, I started getting that covered. Because of the darkness and the depth and the size of it, that's turned into a back piece. My whole back is now covered. But, excuse me, I am very happy with the piece I am having done. It is a blue dragon. It's very intricate. It's a local artist. I've had a piece added. I am the biggest Neil Gaiman fan ever. I read Sandman. I collected the damn issues, let alone reading his books and his poetry, and a fan of his wife's now. But I've had Dream's Helm. Dream is something that's been associated with me very strongly over the years, to the point where an artist has actually done a portrait of me with Dream. So I had his helm worked in. The whole idea of getting the dragon was kind of a dragon, a wyvern, and a griffin guard the gates to the dreaming. Mm-hmm. And I may eventually have the other two worked in, but right now I'm still processing the fact that I'm a back piece person. I didn't think I was ever going to be that nuts with tattoos. I have a tattoo, and that's my most recent, but it's covering my second. So the third one I got was the Gallifreyan one. Now this was something that my husband had asked an artist we all know, Silver Kitsune. She's really into the Doctor Who stuff, and asked her to help design this tattoo. So it is my name, my husband's name, each of my son's name, plus my eldest son still has my last name. So it is all of those names worked into like an hexagonal pattern, and in Gallifreyan, which is really interesting, beautiful, geometric language, lots of circles and lines connecting. And I have that tattoo on my leg, and the tattoo artist, my husband has it on his arm, and the tattoo artist we had the same one do both of them. And mine is done in a style kind of like, it looks like an old stone disc with maybe some moss. It's got greens and grays, like something Indiana Jones would have found. Mm-hmm. And my husband's is more clean and crisp and blues and blacks. So it's kind of like the same tattoo, but very individualized to our own styles. And that whole, like, don't get names on you. I mean, even if my husband and I were to separate or get divorced, to me, tattoos are very much a place in time. Who you are, marking something. This is worth permanently putting in my body, marking something that means something to me. And nothing's going to ever change the fact that we have been a family for a very long time now. And my most recent tattoo is my Bowie tattoo. I am also a very big Bowie fan. I have to say I was touched and flattered. When Bowie died, I had people calling to check and see if I was okay. And I was like, wow, how do I even process that people think of Bowie and think of me? But Black Star, of course, people that know, he knew he was dying when he made that album, and he released it, and then it was like his birthday and then his death, all within a few days. Mm-hmm. And I looked at the cover and I noticed that under the big Black Star, there's this broken up pieces of star underneath. But if you look at it right, it says Bowie in like pieces of star. So I decided to get this tattoo, and I made the appointment. And it goes across my left forearm in an orientation so it's me reading it, not other people, because it's very much for me. And between making the appointment and showing up for it, Prince died. So right. I had a little purple border to each little piece in that tattoo to also honor the artist.
Yeah, because 2016 was just a shitty year.
You got nothing on 2020. It's only fucking April.
It's only the first day of April. I'm just like, what is it about election years the past year? Oh my god. Anyway,
Maybe you believe in God. Maybe it's a damn hint. No, Trump, really? Y'all are fucking up. Please don't do it again.
Well, at least Cthulhu hasn't came out of the water yet, so April could still turn out to be okay.
Yeah, well, now I'm gonna be too busy making pee mess to make that pussy hat for Cthulhu.
Yeah, I know. September. By the way, for those who don't know, September, who is not only trying to keep the entire local artists and local musicians afloat in her in Statesville by helping set up streams and stuff like that, so that they can continue to make money. She is also helping making masks for those individuals who don't have them, because our government, we're not going to be negative, Daniel, is helping those to get masks, not only for frontline workers, but also those who may be helping others with shopping or things like that, so that that they can be more protected. So she's doing that as well. So she
Well, and I'm also making a bag for a friend who she works at local food banks. She has to get out there every day, but she wants to be able to go home and throw the purse in the wash. So.
And that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So and we all know that most purses are unable to be washed. So this would be a definite improvement for that. So. So let's talk about some movies, shall we? Let's talk about movies. Now, I had mentioned this on my personal Facebook, which I don't give out because that's my personal Facebook. But this is when my family first moved down to this area in North Carolina. We got cable and we got HBO, and at the time HBO had one channel and like 12 movies that they played all the time. This is one of the reasons why I can no longer stand the movie Goonies. But there was a movie that always captivated me, and I think it was kind of one of the impetuses of my political activism, and that was Turk 182. It's not a good movie by any stretch of the imagination. It's not a really good movie, but the premise of the movie is so there is this kid and his older brother who is a fireman in New York, and the fireman is out with the boys one night, having a few drinks and stuff like you do, and there's a big fire that they're driving by, and there's a big fire, and they notice it, and the firemen haven't gotten there yet, and he's a fireman, and it's just instinctual. So he runs in the house and he saves this little girl, but by doing so, he gets really badly injured. So the mayor decides that, in the most cartoonish way possible, decides that he's not going to cover this guy's health care because he had been drinking before he ran into the house to save this little girl. So the little boy, basically, not little boy, but the teenage boy, it's played by Andrew McCarthy, basically goes on this political hacking, graffiti, just trying to smear the mayor's name all over New York City, and he'd sign off saying, Turk 182, which was his brother's nickname and his badge number, which anybody should have figured that out, 5 seconds. But but still, it was one of those, it's like a little man can make a difference. This one little guy, calls in a bunch of his friends, helps him out, and basically gets the things done that he wants to get done. And he's turned into this hero, and I'm going, yeah, that's what should happen in our political system. And so that's kind of one of those movies, and it was from the 80s. And like I said, it's not really good, but it was one of those movies that always stuck with me. What about, was there any movies in the 80s that just stuck with you, or?
Not that it would be particularly cheerful.
I know.
Yeah. So there was another movie, and I'm trying to, and I don't think it was King 65, I believe it was called. Because I saw you writing about Turk 182, and I was like, is that the same movie? It's like, no, it's not. I think it was King 65 movie. I'm gonna look it up. But I got really, it was another graffiti artist movie, but it was more kind of like out about it being art, about the, you know, he was kind of punk ass, but it's illegal. But I mean, there's certainly, yeah, Dreams Don't Die, King 65 graffiti movie.
Mm-hmm.
I loved this movie so much. I took chalk, like, pastels, oil pastels, which, you know, was kind of a pain to clean later. I did a big graffiti piece with his tag on one of my bedroom walls. But he was a graphic artist, and he wanted to break into the world of commercial art and all this other stuff. So it's just a very, you know, dramatic journey of an artist trying to break out in a thing, but all he's got for a canvas is, you know, sneaking around and doing really, really fantastic work on like train cars and stuff. So there's the excitement of chases and things like that. But I loved it so much, I painted it, pastel it on my wall.
I'm sure your parents appreciated that.
I had free reign with that. I stapled Smurf pictures all over my wall. You know, I did have the freedom to decorate as I wished, and that was good. But I liked movies like Heathers.
See, I grew up see, besides Turk 182, another movie besides, I loved, don't get me wrong, I love Ferris Bueller's Day Off. I think it's a quintessential teenage boy movie. I'll be perfectly honest.
Oh, lots of fun. Yeah.
It is, but another movie I really love that encapsulates who us as Generation Xers are, is the movie War Games, I think.
Yes.
War Games and Terminator 2, because we had that kind of hanging over our heads. And War Games, I just watched the end scene of War Games again, and I'm just going, because I wanted to start, the quote was like, "Shall we play a game?"
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, then I thought, you know, we're trying to be light, and that's not a light movie.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
But I like those kind of movies were the movies that we watched because it's because it helped us deal with that existential crisis that we were having to deal with in a capsule. Because there's a video that came out on YouTube yesterday from someone I watch called Folding Ideas, where he can't stop watching the movie Contagion because it helps him deal with the emotions that he's dealing with in the real life. So that's, you know, but we're getting into dark stuff, so let's bounce back. I will say this, and you know this for sure. That probably, can you name my favorite movie of all time?
Nope. Because I was say it's like the Lord of the Rings stuff, but
yes, it's the Lord of the Rings.
I wasn't sure
I've
if
seen
you're also movie about it than book. Because you have to close your eyes through part of it, you chicken.
It looks real. I can't look. I can't watch Charlotte's Web. Okay, all right. I am that terrified of spiders. All right, don't mock my fear. I remember seeing. I forget who I went with, but I went and saw. I think it was the second Harry Potter movie where they crash into the forest. And there's the spiders in the forest. Okay. And I basically hid under the seats in the theater, and my friend was not kind to me and told me, "Oh, it's over with." And then there's this giant spider in my face. Okay, so I've seen the Lord of the Rings, the extended cut, so many times that I on original DVD that I had to buy the Blu-ray because I burnt the DVD. I've seen it about 271 times now. The extended cut.
Hey, I might be able to help you with that.
I got Blu-ray, so I'm good now. But and I also own the Hobbit on extended cut. I thought it was okay. I especially like the White Council kicking ass in the third movie. I thought that was perfectly fine. The second movie, there's an entire 25-minute chunk of that movie that I don't watch. I have never seen at all. I'm that terrified of spiders. I can't help myself.
Sure.
I'm sorry. But yeah, so the Lord of the Rings. But the Lord of the Rings also has a lot of wonderful themes. It has themes of friendship, themes of believing in the good in the world. That statement. I got to meet Sean Astin once and have him sign a picture, and it was that quote that he says at the end of the Two Towers, which is, this, and it wasn't about the last part of the quote. It's the first part of the quote. It's about stories and why they're so important, because because they are, something worth fighting for. But it's those stories that inspire us. That's those stories that make us be better people. And I really like that quote in that movie. And I think both in the book and in the movie, it gives you a lot of that feeling, that stories are important, that friendship is important, because at the end of the day, it's the friendship of Bilbo and Frodo that makes it that far. There are two scenes that break my heart, and I have seen it that many times, and I still well up in tears. And the first part is when Boromir dies. Spoilers. When Boromir dies and Aragorn is standing there, and he says, and I'm going to try to say it without choking up, he's like, "I would have followed you, my brother, my captain, my king." Every time I just see that, and it's done so well, and I just start to, oh, that's so beautiful. And the other time is at Mount Doom. Sam, parched, dry. Frodo's like, "I can't carry it anymore, Sam." It's like, "It's just up there, Mr. Frodo. And if I can't carry it, then I can carry you." And I'm just like, "Oh," and I'm just in tears, and I'm just crying. It's like, it's so emotional and so powerful, because it's the power, power of friendship and the power of believing in each other. And I know that, some people are like, "Oh, well, Frodo and Sam are gay for each other." And it's like, if they are, so what?
Yeah,
that's fine. But you also have to look at it from the time that it was written and the person who wrote it. That's just how,
that's unlikely, isn't it?
Well, it's not just that. It's just that men back then, it's been, that's one of the things, I think we talked about this before, but men back then were able to show affection to other men in that way, to say "I love you" to a man without it being thought of as gay or weird. And now it's like you can't show that affection. And I think that's part of the problem that we have as men. And I think it's beautiful that those movies and that book is out there saying you can show that affection to a man as someone who loves you. That's why I like Sherlock Holmes, because of the love that Holmes and Watson has for each other. And they can show that affection, especially in the later stories, which is, I just segue into another love of mine. Sorry. But it's again, it's one of those loves, that they're able to show each other, that is like, we are comrades in arms, we are men, but we love each other, and we can show that and say that affectionately and mean it, and it not be considered weird. So, what about you? Is there a movie that you have watched so many times that you're embarrassed to say it?
I'm not embarrassed at all. I can watch this Princess Bride every day.
That's
And the same with Labyrinth. I could watch it every day. I know every word. I could still probably watch each of them every day.
there is nothing wrong with the Princess Bride.
And that's some both kind of mushy, hashy, happy shit in a lot of ways. And I guess people wouldn't expect it of me. I mean, because like a lot of my favorite movies, now you want something post-apocalyptic-ish that's hysterical. One of my favorite like zombie movies is called Dead and Breakfast.
Okay.
Oh my god, it is so wonderful. It's kind of told like a what do they call it? The Greek tragedy type thing where you've got an occasional musical interlude. So there's
Right.
this like hick narrator singing a song now and again. He's also briefly a character in the, and it's every horror movie trope. It's like a group of young people and they're on their way somewhere and they got a camper and they break down and it's a small town and a spooky bed and breakfast. But it's got like David Carradine in it and his daughter. And then this zombie stuff happens and there's the absurdity of there's an almost thriller moment where the zombies are dancing and the hit guy is playing guitar and like the zombies are coming to get your teach, and along with them, making guns out of hardware store items and whatever's in the house, and the super Christian guy kind of just flipping out when he ends up because they're zombies that they can actually talk still, and he's like, I just can't even. I don't want to spoil it because this is a movie, even though it's been around a long time, not a lot of people have seen. If you liked Shaun of the Dead, you're gonna love Dead and Breakfast.
It sort of reminds me of that Bruce Campbell movie where he played Elvis Presley. And
Okay.
did I just stop? There was a, and I'm
just thinking, yeah.
It's like you know the movie I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it's Bruce Campbell. So I don't think Bruce Campbell technically, though he's been in bad movies, he's never been in a bad movie. There's not been a movie where it's like, it's Bruce Campbell, it can't be bad. I'm like,
Can I ask you what you're using? Are you using anything for your like hand washing song? I know we could all count to 20, but everybody has these songs out that you could use instead of Happy Birthday twice.
I see a little silhouette of a man, Scarlet Moose, Scarlet. Yeah, okay. I'm not singing.
So you're using that. Yeah. Now this just relates to the last question because I am using the quote from Labyrinth.
Okay.
And I like, for me, being kind of like witchy paganish, like the way that one ends, that part of that quote from that movie, feels really good. When I'm like having to do this hand washing all the time. But it's like, give me the child. Through dangers untold and hardships unnumbered, I have fought my way to the city beyond the goblin, to the castle beyond the goblin city, to take back the child that you have stolen. For my will is as strong as yours, and my kingdom is great. You have no power over me. And there's just like this click in my head. I feel really good about you have no power over me being how I'm fighting off this contagion.
I like that. That's very nice. Jennifer, it's Jennifer Connelly, right?
Yes.
And like one of our national treasures, Jennifer Connelly. Now, I'll be honest, I never really got into Labyrinth. I loved Dark Crystal. I never got into Labyrinth. I don't know if it was, I think it was the music. I'll be honest, I'm not a huge musical fan.
Mm-hmm.
Not at all. Like there's like 5 or 6 musicals that I like or can stand. Rocky Horror Picture Show being one. If you want to watch Barney cry, ugly cry, sit him down and have him watch Les Mis. I will ugly cry from I dreamed a dream to the end.
Mm-hmm.
It's just ugly cry, but musicals never really did it for me. I don't like Disney with musicals. I think that's why I never got into Disney cartoons all that much as a kid, because I just don't. I think it's a brain thing in my head, where it's like I don't understand the logic of how you suddenly break out in the song and people are breaking out in the song with you. It takes me out.
I used to just do it walking around outside in the woods in my house, so I relate to it.
Oh, and that's perfectly fine. I'm just like, yeah, it's just like, it's like, what were you hoping some animals would show up and so they'd help you clean
No,
the
it
house?
just would occur to me to just start singing my, whatever I was thinking about or feeling or was pretty. I would just start making up songs.
Oh, also, I can't sing. I've been told it's against the Geneva Convention on torture. Yeah, the last time I went to karaoke, that happened. The UN showed
no.
up.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
You're a liar. I've seen you sing. You're lying.
I sung one song and it was a rock song. And let's be fair, Jack White doesn't have the best singing voice either.
Whatever.
Okay. Unlike you and your gorgeous voice, you sing
I'm getting it back. Not there yet.
You sing like a nightingale. Okay, I sing like Groucho Marx.
Okay, so what else are we talking about?
So, what are your favorite books? What are the books that you return to?
Okay, are we skipping TV?
We can talk about TV after books. How's that?
Just because I have good news there, and good news is good.
Okay.
Favorite books. Well, if we want to talk about inspiring, uplifting books, I have to go to Richard Bach. Richard Bach, the book Illusions, the story of a reluctant Messiah, changed my life. And I periodically read it again, and my eldest son read it a whole bunch of times, and then and I need a new one because I found it the other day and I went to move it and it just fell into many pieces. And I think that's my third or fourth one. Because I give them away a lot too. Mm-hmm. But it's short, it's sweet. And his Jonathan Livingston Seagull, I think I may have actually read that one before Illusions. Mm. And there are a lot of similar interesting messages in that book. So as far as like personally, spiritually inspiring, but stories about self-realizations and growth, and I love those books. I will always love those books. I will read them again and again throughout my life, and there are not many books I will do that with. I have a lot of books I love. The White Raven, although it's hard to recommend to people because it's hard to find. I recently did find another copy, but it was like the last one I could even find on Amazon. Mm-hmm. And I haven't been able to find it digitally, but it's Diana Paxson. It's kind of a retelling of Tristan and Isolde, if you're familiar with the old legend, but it's got a person point of view that I love very much, and of course I'm attached to that name because it was the name of a close group of friends of mine. We had that moniker for years. Mm-hmm. And I mean, just I love books. It's hard to pick. Like, what age are you? What are you into? Because I read a lot of fantasy, but I've also read the fairy faith and Celtic cultures. I like to read nonfiction and autobiographies. Barack's autobiography, The Audacity of Hope, is fantastic. I like that. I've read the entire Wheel of Time series. There's another Bartimaeus trilogy about a demon, and then of course there's Elric, and that series, and Dragonlance books. I've read more of those than I care to admit in public because I collected them for years and years. The series of unfortunate events. My children are of an age that we collected all of those, and then when they got bored with them, I kept collecting them to the end anyway. Harry Potter. Again, a lot of these seem to go without saying. The Anne Rice vampire novels. I love books. I love a lot of books by Orson Scott Card, but I can't support him anymore, so I will not read anything of his that's going to give him money.
Yeah,
but he does things besides the Ender's Game stuff that people know about. He wrote some amazing books, and I got them from the library, but they're kind of in that same vein with. I am reading currently The Black Swan, which is a retelling of the Swan Princess. That's by Mercedes Lackey. And I loved The White Raven so much, which is kind of a more putting it in a place in history and expanding on the fiction to create a larger book form of the Swan Princess. Mm-hmm. He wrote some that were takes on Sleeping Beauty and Snow White that were beautifully done.
Have you read, I think, didn't Neil Gaiman do kind of a Sleeping Beauty book? Okay.
Oh, that one too, well, it's a story.
Mm-hmm.
Or is that oh no, that's... Okay, yes, he did that one. Sorry, I just got reminded of people who are looking forward to... Well, I can't talk about that yet because it's going to be our carrot. But when we do, I will mention something else.
Okay.
That I was listening to the other day.
Sorry. That's okay.
It's going to all sound really disjointed, but I mean, you should see my house. You have seen my house.
Yeah, it's full of books.
There are so many books, and I have a Kindle because I just don't have any more room.
So my mother loved reading books, and she especially loved reading Stephen King. And eventually I started reading Stephen King too. So one of my favorite books is The Stand, which is a book that you shouldn't read right now.
Rob is reading it right now. My dad read Stephen King, so I also read Stephen King.
That's a mistake on his part. Yeah. But The Stand is one of my favorites. It's one of his earlier books, but it's really amazing. The problem with some of Stephen King's books is that the end, there's just not this great ending to his books. So, but the story leading up to it is worth it. It's kind of like the last two chapters are like, but it was worth it getting to here. So it's like, every Christmas I reread the Chronicles of Narnia. I started reading them when I was in the 6th grade. Even then, they were too young for me at that point. But that's where I really fell in love with fantasy, was those books, and everything else. I own the BBC really cheesy BBC TV specials that they did for the Chronicles of Narnia. I absolutely love the Chronicles of Narnia.
Oh, I loved those too.
So I reread that every Christmas. I love the Kalevala, which is the where, if you want to know where some of like Tolkien and Lewis get some of their inspiration from, this is one of the places that they get their inspiration. This is also where Tolkien gets some of his inspirations for some of his languages, is Finnish. But it's the Kalevala is an epic, long poem of the histories of their religious, not so much religious, but their historic tales. I recommend this to everybody who wants to a kind of a different view on history than what you get in the homogenized school system, and that's The People's History of the United States of America by Zen.
Yeah,
I
one of my favorites.
I love that book. I've read it a couple of times. It's just, you get, especially when he talks about, there's this huge swath about unions and the union fights that happen. That is just absolutely amazing to understand what unions went through to even not be just shot at on site, and to try to get unions involved and how that was formed. Is absolutely an amazing story in its own right, and very very harrowing, and our history is full of these kind of wonderful story, not wonderful, but these heroic stories that aren't told that should be. And I think this book really does a really good job of that. Um, I own all three of Keith Olbermann's books of his rants because as many people know who have listened to the show, um, have taken some inspiration from Keith Olbermann. He's kind of my idol when I get into rant mode. When I wished I could pull off I was rewatching where what is his name? Ben Affleck was pretending to be Keith Olbermann on Saturday Night Live, talking about Keith Olbermann pretending that his cat couldn't live at the apartment complex.
Okay.
And it was absolutely hilarious. And I wished I could pull off the comedy side of it as well, but it's just so funny.
Oh yeah, I can see that.
But I'm just a
Right?
huge fan of Keith Olbermann. Like I said, I own his books. God, I just remembered how many books of Tolkien I own. I own Lord of the Rings. I own the Silmarillion. Why?
Me too. That's the only one I read all the way through.
I've read the Silmarillion and I regretted it.
I liked that one.
I
couldn't get through any of the rest. I don't know what to say about it.
I've read The Lovely Bones, which I recommend, but it's one of those hard reads. You really have to be in a place for that. That's not something I would recommend right now.
Yeah, it's a little rough right now. Yeah, that would be.
Yeah. Another one that I actually love that's nonfiction that I bring up quite often is Mere Christianity by Lewis, which I actually like. It's an apologetics book, but I like it as a kind of rebuttal to certain questions about Christianity. Especially the one question at the forward that he talks about is like that we shouldn't stop calling Christians Christians. We just point out if they're bad Christians or not, because language is important. So if there is a bad Christian, you point out that they're a bad Christian, but they're still, by their quote unquote definition, a Christian. And I think that's important to differentiate that if they're claiming to be a Christian, then we have to go on their word on that. But we can point out where they're falling short. And I'll call a bad Christian out. In fact, we're going to be doing that in the stick part in a few minutes. So that's it. But what the book, I remember when I was a child, my parents had gotten this set of encyclopedias, and it came with stories in them. It also came with a set of children's stories, and that's where I kind of learned my love of reading. And they had a whole bunch of different stories, not of grim fairy tales as well as everything else. But I think the one, and you'll probably know this one, the one short story that always sticks out in my head when I think of short stories, because I love Sherlock Holmes and all this, but is written by Neil Gaiman. It was one of the first Neil Gaiman short stories I ever read, and it was called Murder Mystery. I think that's the term of it.
Yes, the one, I know what you're talking about.
That one is so powerful, and it's just like, wow. And you just sit back, and there are so many questions I still have about it. And there are so many things that I want to sit down and be like, I know this is one of your earliest writings, Mr. Gaiman, but I have so many questions about it. and because it is just so epic and so powerful, because it deals with religion, it deals with faith, and it deals with questions, all those kind of questions, that I just find it so entertaining. So, TV shows. You have some good news about TV shows.
Yeah, so CBS All Access, they have a 1-month trial, but you can also watch Picard, which we've started watching. We love by putting the promo code FREE. Mm-hmm. And you have to, you still have to put your credit card information. You're going to have to remember to cancel the trial and everything. But I learned today that they are extending that. So the CBS Access All trial is moving to 2 months for free.
Ooh, that's nice.
So that's a good thing to do for them to do. I mean, yeah, they're trying to get people in, but they're giving people access to content they don't normally have. Now, another thing is I haven't re-signed up yet, but the first time we cord cut, I did have Sling TV.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a good way to get a lot of your local channels, like your news on hand on TV, if that's the way you're used to watching it. But if you've cord cut and want access to like HGTV and Food Network, they have those channels in this like normally very inexpensive package. But they are giving away Sling for free for I think it's a month right now. And they're not even requiring you give them a credit card or anything to sign up for it.
Okay. Well, that's good to know.
Mm-hmm.
So, what were TV shows that you like or inspire, or TV shows you go back to?
Well, it's interesting that, I brought this up, because of the Picard thing, because I was really big on Next Generation Star Trek.
Mm-hmm.
Really big. When that came on the air, I had a party at my house, like a watch party, and watched it religiously for a long time. And then I missed some because I moved away and I didn't have a TV, but I caught up later. And that's something to me as far as kind of a utopia, and it's post-apocalyptic, people.
Mm-hmm.
Like, is this what it's going to take us to get universal health care and such? I mean, because, yeah, I remember arguing with my mom. My mom always thought sci-fi and fantasy are stupid wastes of time, and, you should only read nonfiction or whatever, or historical fiction, I guess she was okay with, because she read The Bastard. And watching TNG, there were so many, and I was studying anthropology at the same time, so that certainly lent to it. But Picard's my captain, and the diplomatic approach, and Star Trek has always been good mixing races, but like the original series was very xenophobic themed in the beginning, and they really changed that with TNG and treating other races like other races, and respecting cultures more carefully, and making that, even though it was kind of soap opera-y, they brought in a lot of like relevant metaphorical themes politically. And yeah, I've always loved that show. That's another, if I'm flipping through channels, I will watch some more of it. I've been trying to get my son to watch the Dharmaket Jalapra thing, because he had a spring reading assignment, and part of it, he chose to read the Gilgamesh.
Mm-hmm.
Is it the Ballad of whatever? Gilgamesh.
The story of Gilgamesh,
and he got approval from his teacher to go ahead and read that for the spring reading project, and that's how Picard figures out what's going on with this guy he can't communicate with, and it's being spoken in metaphors.
Right.
Yeah. So that's going to last me forever, is TNG. But MASH.
Yes.
I used to come home from school and watch MASH, and then WKRP, and then like MASH again.
Yeah.
Every day from school when I was young. So yes, I'm that old, but of things that had impact on me, I didn't watch TV after that for years and years and years, and then nighttime TV things like The Letterman Show and The Daily Show certainly had an impact on my adult life.
As God as my witness, I thought turkeys could fly. MASH was going to be one that I was going to bring up, because I remember as a family, it's one of those things that, we'd be flipping around. It's like, what are we going to watch? There's nothing on TV. And then and there's MASH, and it's like, oh, okay. And it's like, so it kind of, there's some nostalgia there. And honestly, it holds up. You can still watch it.
It really does, yeah.
Some of the sex politics of the early seasons are a little wonky. Okay, they're bad, but it gets better. I will say this: my favorite seasons are when Potter and Charles shows up. Those are my favorite seasons. After Frank leaves and after Frank leaves and everything else, it gets a whole lot better. I honestly think as a show, and it really holds up. The comedy is timeless. The storylines are timeless because you can still see it in the even to this day. There's an episode that sticks in my mind a lot, is about where Margaret, she's the head nurse and she's a major, she's an officer, and she's afraid she might be pregnant, and if she's pregnant, she may have to give up her commission. That's
Right.
something that women still have to deal with in the military to this day.
Yeah.
And then there's an episode with one of my favorite characters, Kelly. She the actress recently passed away. She was a nurse, and there is this thing about where the main character would date all these women, Hawkeye, and he never dated her, and because she was a bigger girl. And so they actually went and discussed that, and come to find out, he was like, "Wow, I am so sorry that I never dated you. You would be so much better than any of the other dated." And then she's like, "Oh, I got somebody else, thanks." So it kind of worked out well for her, and so because it kind of showed him up. So I know you probably want to end this soon. Let's do one more quick topic.
Yeah, we got to get moving.
Yeah. Video games. Are there any video games that stick out to you? Are you a video game player?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
I'm a hobbyist. I played World of Warcraft for years. I'm not currently subscribed, but it was a good social avenue when I had little kids at home and basically couldn't go anywhere ever. So instead of, going on dates, my husband and I would go to Azeroth, and I appreciate the social aspects and the story, and we ran a guild, so, there's like organizational leader skills involved in that. And I kind of miss it sometimes, but I'm not willing to invest in it right now because I don't have the kind of time I used to have to do that. Currently, I'm playing Borderlands, which I didn't used to be much for shooters. When I was doing the Part-Time Gamers podcast, I found a shooter I liked, playing with those guys, and had a great time. The more recent technology, I don't get vertigo the way I used to do with old first-person games.
Right.
Kind of make me sick, and I could never play them, and I'm sure that's helping with this. And it's something that there are a few games you can co-op on.
Right.
So it was something that, I can co-op and play with other people, and I like that aspect of gaming. I'm also playing Kingdom Hearts right now, but I got stuck. I'm stuck. I can't get past a part, so that's probably going to get put down just like Epic Mickey did, and never picked up again. I like games with puzzles and everything, but when there's an actual physical move, can't be that great at it. Like my hand arthritis is annoying me, and it's too hard a move. I just can't get past it. I'm done. I'm not like an elite, gotta be the best at everything gamer. I like the stories, and I like figuring things out for the most part. Now, the other thing I would love to mention for games right now is Jackbox games, because I love playing Jackbox games. That's another fun. I found it on Twitch years ago. I think the Diamond Club folks, somebody was playing Quiplash, which is fantastic. It's almost like Cards Against Humanity, except everyone is making up their own answers to the prompts. And then everybody votes on each other's ridiculous shit they came up with. And it can be funny and it can get filthy. And to me, there's a social dynamic I find interesting depending on the group you're playing with. I mean, you could play this with kids. You could play this with grown-ups. You could play this with a bunch of people who are drunk. And you're going to get a whole different game. And sometimes it will get wildly inappropriate. And it's social. I like to get online on Twitch and just look for a Quiplash game if someone else is hosting it. I do own it and have hosted it. I hosted it at my anniversary party this year. We set up the laptop, hooked it to the TV, and people just play on their phone. whatever device they have, they just sign into the website. But if they're sitting at their desktop, it's fun to like get on Discord and you can all be bullshitting and talking to each other. I mean, like we did in the room at my party. People could play on their phone, but we were all talking and having a good time and laughing at, the results coming up on the screen. So Jackbox has whole suites of these games. Some are trivia based, some are making up jokes, some are puzzles of different kinds, and they're all party games. So and they can be hosted and played online, and you can basically hang out with your friends and do this virtually. And right now, I think they're still having a sale. They're giving away a game called Drawful for like the next month, where that's kind of drawing stuff and people try to guess what it is. And I think there's like a good 20% off on all their party packs right now.
So is Jackbox? It sounds like, is these the guys that used to make You Don't Know Jack?
I don't think so. I'm not
Okay.
Oh wait, yes. I think You Don't Know Jack. Yeah, that's their trivia game.
Okay.
And you can get it in these party packs. And the thing with this, like, one person can buy that pack and host, but everybody doesn't even have to own the game. You can just go to Jackbox TV, they give you a code, and you're in the game.
I remember the You Don't Know Jack games. I'd always have to play them by themselves, and then they would mock me for having to play them by myself. So I was like, gee, thanks.
Hey, if you want some interaction and you want to play with people, you can go to Twitch and just search for those games, and people are often hosting them, and you can just join in.
That sounds like a lot of fun. Now, video games for me, I am a story person as well, because I suck at video games. That's why I don't play Mario at all. Because
I'm not a platformer person.
But there are 3 games, all that I really love, or series of games. One is the Mass Effect series. I absolutely love them, and I've played it multiple times. I love the stories. I love the epicness. I love the characters. I love your teammates and all of that kind of stuff. And I love being able to hang up on the council and tell them that I'm going to do things my way anyways. It's great. It's a lot of fun. Another one that I love that did not get enough love but should have was Spec Ops: The Line. It is a beautiful, it's not well designed as far as a game, but the story is, it deals with PTSD, it deals with all this kind of, it takes you as someone who is a gamer who does these war shooters, and tells you that you're a piece of shit for loving these kind of games. And it's very political and very powerful, and I love that game, and that game deserved more credit. The third one is the BioShock series, BioShock 1 and 2, because there was no BioShock, and BioShock Infinite, because there was no BioShock 2. BioShock is about Rapture, and is basically taking what would happen if you took Ayn Rand's approach to the world and took it to its logical conclusion, which was basically it would become a disaster. And BioShock Infinite is, what would you take if you had a white utopia? What would its logical conclusion be? And both of these games are epic and absolutely beautiful games. And I love those games immensely, and because they speak to me in a philosophical way as well as in a gamer way. So if you're interested in games and looking for some cheap ones, I know they're on the PlayStation Store for inexpensive prices right now, so that may be something you want to do for single player, and they do have multiplayer too if you're interested in that. So that's something to think about. So we've been talking about this, and I know that we had been bantering back and forth before the show, and then I saw this tweet, and I'm like, oh, well, this is definitely something September will absolutely love to talk about.
Oh, sure.
So this is our carrot.
Right. Okay. So, and I've got extra stuff here. So what you sent here is that this is actually happening, but I'm going to give some backstory here. because not long ago, LeVar Burton had tweeted and was saying that he'd really like to be reading some stories, because he's had a podcast, LeVar Reads, I think it's called, and LeVar Burton Reads is the podcast, and he's going to be doing some Twitter live streams coming up. But, I mean, those of you who grew up with Reading Rainbow, of course you want LeVar to read to you. And he posted on Twitter, about wanting to read some stuff, and Neil Gaiman responded and said, "You have my permission, blanket permission to read any of my stories." And, especially in these times. Now, there's another thing that happened, another tweet that went out from a Tom Symes. It's like, "Neil, I'm a teacher. I'm remote learning right now. We finished our class book, and I want to read the Graveyard Book daily. I was going to film myself and upload video to our class Google Classroom. Would you mind if I read your work to the children? Thank you." Neil just was like, "I'd be thrilled if you did. These are unusual times, and I'm giving blanket permission to any teachers and educators and people with loved ones on the other side of screens to read my books on video to each other." So he's given all this, and the one he responded to with LeVar too, where it looks like it is actually just blanket permission for anyone to just read his stuff right now.
Mm-hmm.
I know Amy Frost is thinking about doing it, so that's really exciting. And apparently, LeVar will be reading from on April 3rd, on Friday, a selection from Neil Gaiman. So we don't know what he's going to read, but that's going to be from 6 to 9 Eastern Time, and you can watch that on Twitter live stream. You can pick that up on Stitcher, his podcast, apparently. Now, this isn't the first time, I will add. Sorry, I've got so much extra nerd in this carrot. But Neil gets the big carrot. For giving everyone permission to read all his stuff. But LeVar Burton, if you want to listen right now, you can go to his Reads podcast and find, a couple years ago, he read a Gaiman story called Chivalry. And I'm not going to spoil it, because I think, Barney, you will actually love this story too.
Okay.
I've read the story. I haven't listened to all of LeVar reading it yet. My husband was being very sweet, and we were going for a drive. We had to go shopping, but he stays in the car because he has to be more isolated. And I came back out, and he had this playing. And I was like, "Oh, thank you." And I was like, "Hey, I know this story. Wait." Because it must be in one of the short story books. And yeah.
I will definitely have to take a look at that. So, for the first time ever, we have a winner that has won the stick 2 weeks in a row. And that would be our good religious friends at Hobby Lobby. Now, let me do a little backstory. So, first off, I want to read this to you. The owner, CEO, founder of Hobby Lobby, David Green, is worth, as of November 19th, $7.8 billion. That was his estimated net worth in November. So last week, as you know, he was basically, his wife had a vision that God had told her to keep the stores open. Well, this week they decided they were going to suddenly close their stores, and they laid off all of their part-time workers, and they told their warehouse workers not only were they still going to have to work, but they were going to work for less pay because of the fact that they weren't going to be getting as much income coming in. So they were going to have to suffer and take the brunt of this payment of this issue. So that's what happened as far as the layoffs were concerned, and that would have been enough. That would have been enough for me to rant and rave about them. However, that is not the case today, because what basically happened was today the news has come out that in 2 states, Oklahoma and Ohio, Hobby Lobby has quietly opened up their stores again, and has given instructions to how to deal with officials that come into the stores asking why their stores are open. These are non-essential stores. It's a hobby store, and I understand we need stuff to do, but this is non-essential. And they're basically making these people work for less pay.
The ones they didn't fire.
The ones they didn't completely fire. And because they were part-time employees, unless, and I'm not sure how the stimulus works, but unless the stimulus has changed it, they won't be able to get unemployment either. So, they basically just shoved them out the door, told their warehouse workers they're getting, they're not going to be working for much money, and they hired a bunch of new staff, probably at less pay, and then are making them work in these conditions where we're trying to flatten the curve, and they're making them work. So I want to basically bring up a point. I initially was going to read it, but we're not going to do that. But I do want to state this. Mark 10, starting with chapter 10, starting with verse 17, talks about a young rich man coming to Jesus and saying, "How do I get into the kingdom of heaven?" And Jesus looks at him and says, "Sell your stuff, give your possessions to the needy and the poor, and all your treasures will be in heaven. Then come and follow me." And the young man couldn't do it because he had so much stuff. And he asked Jesus why he needed to do that. And Jesus said, "It is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than it is for a rich man to go to heaven. You are not going to be able to take your billions of dollars and your so-called belief in God. You are a horrible Christian in this time of crisis, and you're laying off your workers instead of supporting your workers, instead of taking those $7.8 billion that you don't need, that you can't take with you to heaven, and you are making them work in these horrible conditions or laying them off instead of supporting your workers, and then you're saying to yourself you're a Christian. You know what? You are a horrible Christian. You are a horrible example, and it's these type of Christians that give honest Christians, honest people who are trying to be lights in this world, a bad name. And for that, you get a stick. I wished I could use it. Anyways.
Tell me about it, Bernie. I have two people. I am only like 2 degrees away from 2 people that have died from this already. One is the legislator that died in Detroit, who was a close friend of several friends of mine in North Carolina here. And another is my girlfriend's aunt, passed of this. And their exposure seems to have come from a funeral they all went to, and then it's a very religious family who, it's in God's hands, everybody got sick, nobody would even go get tested until someone died. Because it's in God's hands. And no. Please stop doing that. I feel like God is wagging his finger and like, you assholes ate the apple from the tree of knowledge, and you have science and you have will. Use it.
Yeah. That I agree with. I agree with that. We have knowledge. I believe people talk, well, there's miracles. Yes, there's miracles every day. It's called science. Science creates miracles all the time. The polio vaccine is a bloody miracle, but it was by science because God gave us the ability to make it. That is my personal belief. You can say it's purely science, and that's fine. But my belief is that it's the miracle that we are able to create these things, and we should use this to our advantage. That science is a gift, is a miracle that we should be using because it's there, and not to be blind about this.
It's funny because it's very much how Rob got with it. He was like, "I gave you scientists."
Like, I gave you scientists. Why won't you listen? It's like why won't you? What do I have to do? Let me give you a plague. Oh, it's in God's hand. I gave you science.
Stop blaming it on me. Right?
like I feel like I just oh god. Okay. Anyway, so yeah. So
Even the best parent can't fix it all for you.
yeah, no. So to David Green and his family and all their greed, you're a horrible Christian and you get to stick. Shall we end tonight?
Sure.
On that note? All right. So thank you again for joining us at Heresy and Hearsay. I'm Reverend Barney, and you can follow me on Twitter at SethRothII. You can find the show on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, podcast, as well as our website. Just Google us. Don't forget our Patreon page where $2 a month can help us go keep going.
And I am September. You can follow me on Twitch and Twitter at 9of12. That's NINEOF12. And you can hear me on the Geek Grills podcast. Thanks for listening today, and bless your hearts. Yay. Okay, so I got it so that you could be heard well after turning you up in 14 different places. The last of which, the one that seemed to work, is actually in Discord in my audio output settings.
That seems weird.
It's a little weird. There are things I'm going to want to clean up my interface. Like, to me, it looks like there should be an echo because I'm coming through in the desktop sounds, and it comes through. All right, I'm going to try something. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Okay, so if I mute my mic, you can't hear me, but it's still apparently going through to the stream.
To the stream?
Then that doesn't make any sense at all, because where would it get the input? But that's an old ongoing problem I discovered a couple months ago, that like I thought I was muting to cough, and it was in all the recordings for both shows. And I have the cam disabled, that microphone, so I don't even know how it's getting in there. But I'm not echoing, so it can't be doing too much.
It's magic. That's what it is. It's magic.
It's magic. And that's what I just wanted to test. I was like, is my mute button actually broken? I was like, no, because if I mute it, you can't hear me. I don't know. Doesn't matter. The important thing is they could hear you. So in this new setup, everybody's going to be able to hear Linda too.
Yay!